ARCUS 1. I would start at the beginning, but I don't know when that was or how long ago I was banished to this prison. What I know is I've been observing and studying the inner workings of this entity that had once been, well, an obsession. How ironic that I should be sentenced to live out the rest of my days in the very thing I sought to destroy. An obsession turned prison, as all obsessions are, I suppose. ARCUS 54. The atmosphere of the realms is dark and grim, to say the least, but also ever-changing. I've already remarked that the atmosphere is misty, even foggy at times, and that this fog feels alive. It seems to contain swirls and streams of memories or imprints of beings from multiple Terra worlds. It is as if the entity absorbs all the psychic energy and thoughts of beings it snatches as it journeys through the endless cosmos. I've used the Aurus to study the black fog, and have come to 3 observations that will prove invaluable to finding a way home. First, the fog is rich in auric particles, leading me to believe this dimension is more conscious than it is material. Second, I should be able to manifest anything I am able to pull from rifts in the fog, using techniques passed down from my family. Third, the entity is far more ancient than we ever suspected back home, and most of our theories and conjectures were wrong. The rich presence of auric particles and cells suggest it is one of the original ones, an ancient. ARCUS 129. A knock at the door and an invitation attached to a bottle of whiskey waiting for me at the foot of the door. I kneeled to inspect the invitation. You are cordially invited to the entity's birthday. The entity has a birthday. Am I losing my mind? My grip on reality, whatever that actually means here? Is this some kind of prank by a marooned soul? ARCUS 142. The entity is the cosmic embodiment of evil. Back home, we witnessed how its very presence turns worlds inside out. How it seems to remove or extinguish any sense of empathy or compassion within communities. How it brings people to the brink of madness and, well, pushes them in. Now I understand. It does all this in order to rip victims from their lives and have them play out an endless trial of terror that it presumably needs for its own survival. And there, perhaps, lies the key to its destruction, if an ancient can be destroyed at all. End the trials. Destroy its ability to sap dark nectar from victims like a cruel parasite feeding from a flower. At least the archives affords me a better understanding of the entity, why it moves from universe to universe, picking victims off and devouring worlds as though at a cosmic buffet. What I have yet to conclude is whether it is attracted to worlds that are brimming with darkness and madness, or if it is in fact the catalyst of such darkness and madness. ARCUS 182. I have discovered structures within the realms of the entity that remind me of home. It is possible others from Terra Primus have found themselves marooned within the entity. These survivors could have with them knowledge to free me from this tower, and possibly ideas on how to escape this infernal dimension. As far as I know, we were one of the first of the many worlds to begin unraveling these great cosmic mysteries and proving that planets and solar systems were, well, alive. These discoveries led to entire paradigm shifts that unlocked for us our ability to travel from dimension to dimension. Where once we thought our knowledge was absolute, these discoveries showed us how little we actually knew about the world. ARCUS 223. I felt an uncanny and unseen presence in the archives as I contemplated the entity. I could hear the labored breathing of killers standing outside my prison. I looked out into the dark, raging fog and saw nothing. Either the entity is aware of my presence and is preparing to send killers to put an end to my plans, or the memories of survivors are somehow merging with my personal memories, and these sounds are mere side effects of overusing the Aurus. In the end, it doesn't matter. If I could end the entity, I would, even if it meant my own demise. My life is little to pay for the salvation of the worlds it will destroy. ARCUS 293. Things could have been worse. I could have been banished in a dimension without auric fog, containing the memory imprints of countless victims. Memories that keep me entertained and busy with my coin and spirit collections. And the music. The variations from parallel worlds. It helps pass the time. In a twisted way, I think what I'm admitting is that I'm glad the entity takes what it wants, when it wants, from the Omniverse. ARCUS 328. There is a curiosity at the core of every thinking person. A need for knowledge from uncharted and unknowable territories. But what is discovered in those blank spaces of the abyss, of the cosmos, are things far too immense to understand. Things better left unobserved, lest they undermine our sanity. Better to embrace ignorance than face the truth of our insignificance in the grand scheme of it all. Against the vastness of the infinite, we are mere microbes, swirling in an endless, indifferent cosmic stew. I say stew, but the entity is probably more of a blood pudding. ARCUS 345. I have recently wondered if survivors realize the titanic significance of their thoughts and feelings, and of how the entity uses them to furnish the trials. Thoughts and feelings that bring me glimpses of what it's like to have lived on a parallel world as someone else. It helps pass the time. ARCUS 437. I'm going to have a couple shots of whiskey from Terra 917, experience a few memories, then head to bed. The warmth of spirits from 917 has always had a way of lulling me away. While it is true this is a cruel fate, an even crueler fate would have been to have been imprisoned here without the Aurus, without the ability to manifest and create and enjoy. It feels strange, as this may seem as the nexus of creation, able to travel memories and cull from those memories without restraint. Helps pass the time. Definitely helps pass the time. ARCUS 557. All planes of existence are a unique mix of conscious auric particles and material particles. The entity is almost certainly pure consciousness. The observable fact of existence is the material world responds to and changes with consciousness. Collective consciousness is the key. The body, the home, the trial, all of it is an expression of the entity's unconscious need for fear and terror. The distinct observation in the specimens chosen by the entity is that they all come from worlds that have failed to understand the metaphysical relationship between their thoughts and the world they live in. This is not by chance. It is, to my mind, self-preservation. Victims who know this truth and have honed their ability to manifest could be poisonous to the entity. This leads me to believe the entity is attracted to dark worlds because darkness and chaos are clear indicators that inhabitants have failed to connect the dots between the collective consciousness and the health of their world. The conclusion, then, might be that the entity feeds off ignorance. ARCUS 571. Gut-wrenching shrieks echoing through the fog disturbed my sleep. I woke up, put on some slacks, clambered to the roof with some whiskey, and hit golf balls into the abyss. There's something about hitting iron and wood into oblivion that's calming, even therapeutic. I must have hit 1,000 golf balls before the yelling and screaming finally subsided, and I called it a night. ARCUS 572. Someone left a bucket of golf balls at my door with a note, "Best balls ever." Upon further inspection, I realized they were hardened eyeballs. Fossilized eyeballs, collected no doubt throughout the Lost Realms. I didn't realize eyeballs could be fossilized, or that they make, dare I say, decent golf balls. I actually wouldn't mind another bucket. This must be a gift from my mysterious friend. ARCUS 632. Through a rift, I believe I culled another memory of Vigo, manifesting reality within the entity with something reminiscent of the Aurus. How he came to understand the machinations of the fog is both puzzling and inspiring. It suggests to me that perhaps this place enhances one's connections to our infinite selves throughout the omniverse. ARCUS 723. I pity Dwight. It's as though every action he takes brings the opposite of what he intends. Trying to help his fellow employees from an abuser, he ends up shutting down the entire operation, leaving many in a far worse situation than they were ever in. Granted, spiking a narcissist's drink and watching him unravel was worth the price of admission. The many memories of survivors struggling with narcissists have led me to the conclusion that there are only 3 possibilities when relating to a narcissist: enable them, run away from them, or destroy them. But beware, narcissists take everyone with them when they go down. ARCUS 731. Hard to tell when one day ends and another begins. The tower and the library help me cope, but it's hard to forget the truth of my situation, even for a moment, knowing everything I have is a lie. I have access to anything I want, and yet I have nothing. The survivors continue to undergo the trials of the most brutal of killers. I continue to search the fog for the memories of those who found a way to escape. It sometimes feels like a futile search. But then again, I've got time on my hands. Lots of time. ARCUS 767. The Aurus was little understood back home, and to be fair, I wasn't given the chance to explain its merits to the Council. Had they taken the time to understand, they would have realized that though I had no verifiable explanation for how the Aurus works, I had theories. And the most reasonable was that the Aurus works on the basis of the Trinitarian of creation, a concept long held by our ancestors and forgotten throughout the ages. But the concept isn't complicated, isn't witchcraft, isn't a secret. It simply suggests that it takes 2 things to create a third: a father and mother to create a child, an idea and passion to create something new, something real, something lasting and meaningful, a thought and feeling. Therein lies the best theory of the Aurus and how it is able to create with auric particles. The failing of other pioneers back home is they believed thought alone was enough, when in reality it is only half the equation. The other half is emotion, for it is feeling and passion that fuels the fires of creation. The Aurus amplifies and manifests and forges something new using the mold of thought and the fires of passion. Or, I've been here too long, and I'm grasping at theories to pass the time. ARCUS 789. Emotion, passion, interest. They are the spark, the undefinable force that enables creation. You cannot manifest anything if you are not filled with emotion about it. The Aurus was ridiculed because the Council lacked understanding. This might be the whiskey ruminating, but Art is not created by thought alone, but by thought and feeling working in harmony. Feeling is everything. Feeling is the most important aspect of bringing anything to life. It is the fuel that makes thought and intention reality. ARCUS 893. Several survivors went mad trying to escape the trial. They had with them memories of previous incarnations, so that one survivor began dashing his head against a wall, convinced he was reliving a nightmare he had just escaped. The other survivors drowned him in mud to shut him up. It seems to me survivors are torches growing dimmer and dimmer with every trial. Some stop to feel altogether and are doomed to the void. Others go raving mad and need to be silenced by others. ARCUS 968. Strange, luminous markings left in the trials for survivors and killers that help me navigate and study rifts with greater ease. Someone is trying to reach out to me. Tampering with the entity, using tricks to secure my attention, to let me know I'm not alone. To let me know I'm not the only one able to manifest within the entity. Yet the knowledge of living dimensions and ancients is knowledge few have developed amongst the infinite terra worlds within the known galaxies. ARCUS 1032. Jumbled experiences of brutal killers and weird rituals of godless brutes from worlds too dark to care. I jerked myself straight out of one memory that pulled me into a cavern of bodies with an odor so repugnant I was retching for hours. I still have that horrible taste in my mouth and shudder at the thought of that smell. That horrible smell. Rotting humanity. What foul creature of a man had made this festering hole his lair is beyond me. ARCUS 1043. I look and observe the realms of the entity with eyes that see disharmony, chaos, fear, and terror. And yet I acknowledge I may be swayed by appearances, and that there may be another truth beyond the veil, and it feels futile, if not absurd, to try to put to words what I am seeing. ARCUS 1118. There's nothing like silence to drive you mad. I stared out into the endless ocean of black fog surrounding me and quickly realized how incredibly small and insignificant we are. Dread and despair soon overtook me, and I began to realize how arrogant we were back home to try to define and describe these living cosmic entities. We thought we had figured most out. We barely scratched the surface. ARCUS 1256. Discovered new memories of Evan, which shed some light on his descent. The question I am asking myself is, did the entity begin to corrupt him before he was snatched for the trials, or was all that anger and bloodlust a result of his harsh upbringing? Either way, I would not expect him to comply with another authority figure, even if that figure was an old one. ARCUS 1513. I have used the Aurus to explore the memories of an unknown survivor who comes from a world where, from what I can gather, a cult for the entity exists. It's not a surprise, or the first time I've seen such a thing, but the memories suggest she was a detective of sorts trying to prevent a cult sacrifice before she was snatched for the trials. I'm not sure what happened to her, and we'll have to explore the fog to unravel more. ARCUS 1672. I have culled imprints of a killer I have yet to observe. My best guess, judging by the nature of the crimes, is this brute is from Terra Dark. She lured men with love, robbed them of their savings, and fed them to her pigs. Lovely, efficient, and resourceful. The impressions of the memory are as follows. He stands framed in the doorway with flowers, a stupid smile on his dumb face. He has no sense that his days are numbered. Lonely soul made the trip for a wife. He thinks he'll get everything for a ring, her land, her farm, her savings. Won't happen, won't go as planned, not as he planned anyway. It didn't for all the other lonely souls who answered her classified ad. She peers at his eyes and thrills at his ignorance. His long, dumb face, his false sense of superiority. He wrote her a poem, how sweet. She'll cram it down his throat when he's convulsing on the floor. She takes his poem and asks about his money. He has it with him, packed his savings in a bag and made the journey for a new start. He'll get more than he bargained for, way more, to the bank with his money, to the pigs with him. ARCUS 2903. I rose early to experience a few deaths in the archives I recently captured from the rift. I had some milk from Terra 728. I listened to a radio show from Terra 232, horror stories and tales of terror. I read a new version of Dante's Inferno from... I'm not sure where. I thought of home, had some whiskey, and slept for what felt like an eternity. ARCUS 3212. From a window, I see something moving with an uncanny light. Through the black fog, it shines there, beckoning me. And yet I cannot leave. I cannot move. I can only bring things to me through the Aurus. What light is this? Is it a creature sent by the entity? Is it a survivor? Or perhaps it's a marooned soul from back home searching like myself for a way back. An unnatural wind whines, and I stare at the moving, hypnotic light. A hideous watching eye, trying to reach out to me. Trying to tell me something. Trying to convey something in its strange, rhythmic movement. ARCUS 4902. Life is not life in this prison, and death is not an escape. It is merely the start of a new trial, and most survivors are aware they are caught in something they will never understand. Why this is all happening is no longer obvious to me. The truth is, I don't know what to believe anymore. The entity is not what it is, or what I thought it was. ARCUS 7294. I woke up soaked in blood, with no recollection of what transpired the night before. The blood dripped off my nose and chin. I felt my forehead and scalp to discover a deep, stinging gash. Accident? Self-inflicted? Nightmares of the fog? Creatures of the abyss? I didn't know. Later, by the bed, I discovered a purple mound of flesh and gore. I cleaned the slop and tossed it out the window into the abyss, from where it had come. ARCUS 7456. I am taking notes under incredible mental strain. I have had flashes of survivor memories overrun my senses all day, and I'm trying to focus on home and gather myself. I haven't used the Aurus for some time, and yet I have been pulled in and out of these lives randomly. These records, these archives will, I imagine, help me remember myself, should this Aurus nudge me into the abyss. ARCUS 7547. Whiskey deep into the night. A strange aftertaste, a flavor from a world which makes the best whiskey. Whiskey dreams are some of the most pleasurable, dreams of home, with friends and family, enjoying time lost. When my senses returned, I realized I had turned my palace of a prison upside down. I remembered none of it. Everything a drunken blur. So many paintings and statues I had created from memories from other worlds. Shattered. I'm losing my grip on reality, and maybe that's a good thing. One day merges into the next, and I'm lost in a storm of whiskey, screams, and endless streams of broken memories. ARCUS 8875. It's always entertaining to watch a survivor try to escape with a femoral artery lacerated. Some victims actually get quite far before shock and cardiac arrest overwhelm them. They fight and struggle for life as if death were final. Perhaps this is the reason the entity wipes the slate clean with every resurrection. The unwavering belief that death is real gives weight and gravitas to the trial, to the experience. Otherwise, survivors won't care, wouldn't run, wouldn't feel. The fear of death is the pulse of life, and believing death is real gives emotion to the experience. It, in other words, feeds the entity. ARCUS 9082. Max has quite an arm. A farmer made his way out of a barn, and with one well-aimed blow with a spade, his head was severed from his shoulders, and 2 spouts of hot blood burst from his body like geysers. He watched the headless man stagger stupidly and collapse in a growing puddle of steaming blood. I have to admit, I've gone through this memory more than once. It's one of my favorites. I find Max disturbingly amusing, and the illusion of death fascinating. At a distance. ARCUS 9873. King has this way of doing things that are quite amusing. One of my favorite memories I return to time and time again whenever I need a lift is Memory 2332. Gasoline Man. King grabs this man who skipped a few payments on a loan. He drags him by the hair and throws him in an alley. He grabs a metal gasoline container and douses the sod with its contents and lights a match. He stares at him through the flickering flame as the man screams in terror. He watches him beg for his life. Then he flings the match. The man's eyes pop out of his head as the flame hits his chest and falls to the floor with a sizzle. King tells him to make his payment or next time he'll use real gasoline. Brilliant.